The time is nigh, open up your eyes to see the signs of the times. Got to be wise to all of their lives. Look to the skies from where my help comes. Wake up, got to wake up from the slumber. Don't let them pull you under. Rise up off the water. Never let them wrestle you into the mud.
Yes, family. Greetings in the name of His and Her Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, Empress Wazira Menin. Y'all already know one perfect balance. Welcome to Politically Incorrect, where we get it correct. And if we're not correct, feel free to correct us. Having said that, let me just go ahead and put that number on the screen in the early, right there. Remember, we on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday at 8 o'clock, usually, unless something else goes awry, but we will be on one way or the other, even if it's 12 o'clock. Tell a friend and tell a friend, family. The thing is, tonight, the program, I kind of shifted it a little bit because of what has happened today. And I've been saying this on this program for a while. You know, the water in the Caribbean does not divide us. The water connects us. We're only divided by these flags that we were given and these different particular names of these different entities that came and found us. And I always say, what happens in one territory of the region is happening to all. We are too small a space to feel like we are so different, which is funny because you look at the topography, you look at the culture, you look at each other, we represent one another. So we're going to take a trip across the water tonight. We're going straight across to our brothers and sisters in Dominica. I suppose most of you have been hearing and seeing what's going on. There have been some challenges for a while, and I want to thank those who've been keeping us posted and updated behind the scene now for months and years. But today somehow reminded me of the time when, you know, we watched tear gas being fired on people because they wanted to question the validity of a particular, what do they call it? I don't know what to call it, the vaccine or whatever they call it, but there were questions about it and that didn't go well. But tonight we're going to jump right into it, family, because of time and the situation is pretty much, it's still in real time. It's not like it's a case where something has ended. That's the end of it, and we're doing a discussion. This is still ongoing. So I want to first commend those individuals who actually decided to come on and share their story, share their experience, and bring an awareness to the people of Barbados and the rest of the region and across Dominica, because in reality, this platform is the voice of the voiceless. So I'm going to jump right into that. Having said that, as always, I'm going to shout our usual family out. Y'all already know from New York to Canada to England, across the region, Africa, you know, so let's not, we're going to get into that a little later. I just want to bring the guests in and our brothers and sisters and let them share their experience with us from the beginning. There's a video I want to play as well. I think I should probably do that one first. I want to play this video first to set the kind of the stage of where we're going tonight. And from there, we can jump into the other matters. One of the things I think is critical though, did I save that one? Did I, oh, wait a minute. I think I sent it to myself. Let me just pull it down real quick. One of the things I think is even more critical though, is us recognizing that, here it is. As a people in the Caribbean, as a people that, you know, see ourselves as children of the soil, those who were taken that are still here. You know, one of the things we always talk about is, you know, bringing justice to those who don't get justice, bringing awareness to those who are not necessarily aware, recognizing that, you know, the more things change, the more they almost seem the same. So I'm going to play this short clip just to give an idea of what's going on the ground. I want you all to be mindful that viewers' discretion is advised. Let me say this because there's some scenes that are a bit violent and I don't want to highlight the violence. I want to bring the awareness that is a mindset that seems to be okay with some people to be violent towards their own. And as a mindset I want to focus on because it's an indication of what is clearly to come. So take a look at this video and we're going to bring the guests in shortly after that, family. Let me go ahead and press. Like I said earlier, you know, discretion is advised to some degree.
What's it?
Okay, like I said, it's a clear indication that things have escalated beyond a simple protest. This is a whole different conversation. Now, here's the thing: I've not seen any footage of protesters being violent towards individuals, and so I don't know how it got from where it was supposed to be to what it is. So join us tonight is some individuals from Dominica Direct. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and share their story, their testimony about the chain of events. So having said that, let me just go ahead and bring the guests in. Just give me, what is it? What is that? 10-second pause. Let me see. Let's do probably a second. Let's do a 7-second. Yes, welcome to Politically Incorrect, where we get it correct. And if we're not correct, family, as always, to tell them, feel free to correct us. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and give us your story. And thanks again for joining us. I would say ladies first, but Queen Esther, talk to us.
Okay, so I am Rosie Felix. I love the story and the strength of Queen Esther in the Bible, so I call me Queen Esther. But I'm Rosie Felix. I'm a nurse and midwife by profession, also an online entrepreneur. But I'm a woman who stands I'm an advocate for justice and righteousness. So anywhere I see injustice and unfairness, I speak to the issues. Presently, I'm on the electoral coalition, electoral reform coalition of Dominica. The chairman is right here, and it's because a few years now we've had issues with our electoral reform. So, having been having started a movement again, looking at Rosa Parks. So I started a movement, for women, and then the ARC Electoral Reform Coalition asked me to join them. So, and we have lots of politically incorrect issues in Dominica. So I'm happy to be standing for country, and today was no different.
Well, I guess, again, you clearly are the voice of the voiceless. I know Dominica has a lot of voiceless individuals, and the way I understand it is set up isn't necessarily set up for people to have a platform to share and be heard. So I want to thank you for your courage, Queen Esther, for sharing with us. Also, we have Brother Thomas Fontaine. Is this how you pronounce your name? Thompson Fontaine?
Thompson Fontaine, Dr. Thompson Fontaine. Yes. So I'm currently the political. Yeah. Good evening to you, as well as to your many listeners and my colleagues from Dominica. I am the political leader of the United Workers' Party. This is the largest opposition party on Dominica. I've been the leader now for about 2.5 years, and recently I was the strategic advisor in South Sudan, and before that, an IMF economist. And today, I'm just recovering because the video that you showed kind of shocked me because I had not seen it. I was on the scene earlier. I had not seen this video, and I happened to know this individual because he is from my constituency, and we visited him at the police cells today. He's still in police custody. We have demanded that the police take him to the hospital. And I'm just realizing the severity of the blow that he received. Apparently, he was knocked out cold, clearly unprovoked. An individual who apparently was being led away. And then all of a sudden, the police officer, in a very brutal fashion, knocked him out. This cannot go unnoticed. It cannot go unpunished. And we have to do something about this.
Clearly, my thing is, again, how the Caribbean is supposed to be. When people say the Caribbean, people think of turquoise water, they think of peace, tranquility. To see this stuff is like we're looking at something in the Middle East. we're so
Yeah,
used to seeing this in the
absolutely.
Middle East,
Absolutely.
but here it is the Caribbean now, and this is at our doorstep. What do you think about in terms of the implications of what this does across the region?
Yeah, no, it is horrific, and again, coming from with my experience working in South Sudan for the past 7 years, and seeing this, it reminded me of the kind of human rights abuses that we saw in that country, a country that's embroiled in conflict. And here it is in my peaceful Dominica. I'm seeing that kind of behavior from our police, and it is quite shocking to me and extremely disturbing, extremely disturbing. I saw him at the cells, and I saw the wound to his head, but I did not realize the manner in which it was done. And seeing this video for the first time tonight is extremely shocking, and I have no words to describe it. But the fact that it is happening in my country, and you wonder why. What could have provoked these officers to behave that the way they did? They were never under any threat. We were there peacefully, no weapons, peaceful demonstration, and yet they behaved in such a heavy-handed manner, unleashing just a tremendous amount of tear gas, rubber bullets. I saw individuals who were injured. One man got it in his head, at the back of his head, another in his shoulder, another in his leg. Just a number of persons nursing injuries tonight. And you wonder why and for what reason. We were there in a very peaceful manner. Not one police officer was injured. Not one police officer was ever under threat. And to see that kind of behavior, somebody must account for this. We are not going to take this lightly. We are not going to take this without some demanding some action, especially for those police officers who are responsible. This has to stop.
Yeah, I want to add also, thank God for the allowance of technology to the people, because in reality, I wonder how many other things went on that were not captured.
Exactly.
Exactly,
because although I was on the scene earlier, but then when they started to unleash the tear gas, I had to run away because it almost blinds you.
Yeah.
And breathing, and I've been suffering from the flu for the whole week, so just my breathing was very erratic, so I had to run away. So a lot could have happened that we are not aware of. So I'm very thankful that at least that was captured. But you wonder what else, what other abuses were committed by these police officers, and they must be held to account for those abuses. Absolutely.
Indeed. Brother Johnson, Boston. Tell us your position. Introduce yourself to us and give us your thoughts on the situation. I'm not hearing you very clearly. I know your mic is not muted, is it? No. No, I'm not hearing you at all. I'm not sure if the others can hear you. No, I'm not hearing you, Miss. Okay.
I don't hear him either.
Okay. Well, what you might have to do, Mr. Austin, is maybe log out and come back in, maybe, and check the mic in terms of allowance or otherwise. Yeah. Okay, we'll let Mr. Johnson sort that out and come back to us. One of the questions I want to ask, though, and I was kind of, when I first saw the videos, that automatically came to my mind is like, why were you out there in the first place? I mean, because bear in mind, we're seeing it from after the fact, not knowing what led up to this protest, what led to this response. Give us the behind story.
So the Dominica Labour Party has been in power for this year 25 years. The last 20 years, we've had issues with fraud elections. So opposition forces and the people, we decided that we need electoral reform. In fact, in 2025, we still do not have voter ID card. Our electoral list is very bloated. More than the numbers is bigger than our population. So for the last 15 to 20 years, we've been advocating for electoral reform. and this government has resisted and resisted, but we have pushed so hard and so long, they had to give in. And so the prime minister, well, we have an electoral office, an electoral commission, but which has not taken its responsibility seriously. In fact, there are two gentlemen on the electoral commission who are sellers of CBI passports. So that should give you an idea of what's happening, including the chairman of the commission. And so we've been pushing and pushing, and the prime minister hired Sir Dennis Byron to prepare a draft um, of the reform, and so Byron did that. Um, for the most part, we were not happy at first when he hired Sir Byron, because we thought we in Dominica are enough. We could do that job on our own. We have enough legal minds and common minds that could put this together. So he did hire Sir Byron to do that, and at a cost, a high cost to our taxpayers. I think it was close to $500,000. And then
Wow.
when this report and this draft was submitted, the government basically scrapped it. And so we had some so-called consultations with the people, but the prime minister basically is saying is what he wants, and what we know for a fact is that the commission itself and the political advisors and supporters and insiders of the Roosevelt Skerrit government are saying, hey, so you need to protect your winning legacy. So giving us some comprehensive reform, best practice reform, would stall this legacy that our prime minister wants to have. And so in December he went to the House with a first reading, and we were out there protesting. We decided that there are certain aspects we wanted included, and I will leave that for Mr. Fonglin, so I don't give, so he gets a chance, and Mr. Boston. So there were factors, there were elements we wanted included in that, but the prime minister, with his 19-2 majority, decided, come what may, they are going to the House today and they are passing that bill to legalize the stealing of election. That's what it is in layman's term. And that is why we stood today, and the police, the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force, whose motto is justice for all, I think that's what it is, enabled our government to go to the parliament and pass incomplete laws to legalize the stealing of election. There's no better way I can say it. And so that is why we who are on your program tonight, we stood, and hundreds of other Dominicans stood as well. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are you all hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, so let me just put myself back on.
There you go. There you go.
You hear me now?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Yes,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, let me say good night to you and to your listeners, and of course to the people of Barbados and the region who are tuning. And let me say good night to my colleagues, Dr. Thompson Fontaine and Sister Rosie Felix. I mean, today we were out whole day from morning and showing that the message was loud and clear around Parliament, and of course, for sure, many media houses in the region picked it up, and it's important that we're here with you tonight to explain so that the region can understand what we're talking about, what we are fighting for. And before I go there, let me say my name is Johnson Boston, as you rightly said earlier on. I'm the chairman of the Electoral Reform Coalition. I served in Parliament as a parliamentary secretary and, of course, as a senator. And I am presently engaged as a hatchery technician in Dominica. Before that, I was an aquaculturist and so forth. So this is what I am, and I'm involved. Well, I've been so for a long time in the people's business, the welfare of the people, in terms of ensuring that our democracy and our fairness and way of life is protected and promoted. But today, as was rightly articulated earlier on by Sister Rosie Felix and Dr. Thompson Fontaine, the 19th day of March today, our parliament met and the Prime Minister decided to go for the second and third reading of the electoral reform bills. And what we have been querying about these bills is one, the Prime Minister is on the, well, I would say he was and he has succeeded to pass a law in Parliament, not for the country and its people, but a law for the Labour Party, his party. And that is to legalize the loopholes in the existing legislation so that they can continue to have a grip on the politics of exploiting the loopholes. And one of the things though we said is that our voters ID, our voters list has 74,000 plus persons on it, and our population is about 70 or so thousand people. So how your population can be less than your voters list? And we're saying that what they are recommending in the new legislation is to have a reconfirmation. And the idea, what we found out is that the idea of the reconfirmation is this: there's some marginal seats in Dominica where you need a few votes to tip those seats. And in most of those seats, the UWP has shown a lead in those seats. And what they have done is to bring in voters from other islands and further afield to vote in those marginal seats, and that give them a victory in those seats.
Yeah.
And give them a victory in the parliament and so forth. So what they want to do is to be able to get the set of voters, of 3,000 to 4,000 voters, get them in a way to reconfirmed. So they may just call and say, well, I am John Brown and I live in Maho, and I call to say I'm on the list and I want to reconfirm. And therefore these people would be accepted to be on the list. And when that is done, we suspect that the Labour Party, as they have done before, will pay their way to come to Dominica to reconfirm. And the other Dominicans who, because the majority of Dominicans in the diaspora are not supporting Roosevelt Skerritts and his policy, and they would not engage themselves in bribes to come and vote or to interfere in the electoral process in Dominica because they live elsewhere. So he knows that. So what they will do though, after they reconfirm their pool of voters, the 3,000 to 4,000 pool of voters overseas, then you have 12 months in the first instance, an extension of 3 months, will make it 15 months in total, to then put that in effect. So those who did not come to reconfirmed, who are not supporting the Labour Party, will be removed from the list, and they may have a voice wherever they live outside of Dominica, but they will not have a vote. And if they have to re-register, get back on the list, they have to come to live in their polling division for 3 months to get back on the list. And we're saying one set of voters cannot have, VIP treatment, and others have to be treated in that way because the voting process is one man, one vote, and it must be equal. The other thing, though, is the voter ID card, because we have been asking, we're the only country in the region without the voter ID card. So a voter can go anywhere and vote and say, give a false name wherever he go and vote multiple times. Wow. So you say, let's have a card, put the biometric on the card, but this biometric information should not be left to the discretion of the chief elections officer or the electoral commission. It should be legislated in law that nobody will change it to their whims and fancies, okay? And we're asking, that is a simple thing we're asking for, and they're resisting that. And thirdly, monies play a big part in our election. So as it is now, our election is really up for grab from the highest bidder. And we're saying the amount of money that the incumbent government, because of the passport deals and other kickbacks they get from businesses, from persons who want to do business in Dominica and so on, And we may even say there may be money laundering activities and drug money activities in the thing. They have spent millions of dollars in the campaign, while the other parties may just have a couple thousands of dollars. So the playing field is not leveled, and we're saying that our citizens in Dominica should have the opportunity to make themselves available to contest and articulate their programs and policy and let the Dominican voters vote for them. And that's what they too are resisting. So this is what we came out there for.
Mhm.
We've been talking about for many years,
Mhm.
and the government is resisting because they see value for themselves in having millions of dollars for a campaign to bring in voters from overseas, Dominicans who live abroad to vote, and they see value in not having the ID card properly defined and so forth. So we're saying um, facial identification on the card, the name, polling division. So if you vote, say, in FO2 in a particular constituency, you can go to another one and say, I'm so and so and vote, because they will see your card, will be able to sell it out. So we are talking about ending multiple voting in Dominica and let the system be free and fair. And that's what this government has resisted. And so today
Oh,
we came out, and a number of Dominicans came out. I appreciated the turnout. One could say it could have been more, but you always start somewhere. And their voice was clear that we do not want a reform system in Dominica that is not free and that give the government continuous advantage to steal elections in Dominica.
wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that as well. One of the questions I want to answer, and I guess Mr. Fontaine can address this as well. What about the opposition? I mean, there's nobody that's in Parliament speaking out, speaking on behalf of the people. Is there a strong opposition representative inside Parliament?
All right. So, as I indicated, the United Workers' Party, that's my party, the party that I now lead, the largest political party, we actually boycotted the last election, which was held in 2022. So what happened was a number of independent candidates went up in a few constituencies, probably about 4 or 5 constituencies. And out of that, 2 made it to parliament. So 2 of them won the seat. So you have 2 independent candidates. Added to those 2 independent candidates, you have 4 senators. So there are 6 members in opposition in the 30-member parliament. So government has 24. That's 19 seats plus actually 25. 19 plus 6 senators. So that's the makeup of Dominica's parliament right now. So in a sense, the opposition does not have a very strong voice per se. Our party is not represented, and we have almost we normally gain about 45-46% of the vote, of the popular vote. So we have not been represented.
Wow.
We are not really represented in parliament per se. So a lot of our agitation is like events like what we had today, where we called out the public onto the streets to register our dissatisfaction with what was being offered as reform. Because as Rosie pointed out, we have a voters list where you have individuals on this list who migrated out of Dominica over 40 years ago, never came back to Dominica, and yet their name remains on that list. My grandfather, who died in the 80s, his name is still on that list. So it's a very bloated and convoluted voters list that has not been cleansed over several decades, but it has suited the government. It has suited Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, because what he's been able to do very effectively, and given the fact that Dominica has very small constituencies, you can actually reverse, or you can actually win a constituency with a difference of 50 to 100 votes, sometimes even less.
Wow.
So, for example, when we last contested the elections in 2019, in 4 constituencies, we lost by a combined vote of 120. There's 120 votes in 4 constituencies that we could have won, that we lost by. So he's been able to manipulate these very small margins. He's brought in thousands of voters, and the way it is done is that he basically charters a plane, and usually charters planes from the United States or from the US Virgin Islands. They come into Dominica. They then provide buses for those individuals on the day of the election. They then bus them to the constituencies. They vote. They bus them back out to the planes, and they take off. And that has been going on for the past 3 election cycles. And
You've got
that
to
is,
be kidding. You've got to be kidding me. Say that again. You're saying that
yes,
they fly people in on
they fly
charter
people in
flights
on via charter on the election day. On the
on
election,
election day.
on election day. They fly them in early in the morning. They arrive in Dominica. They're picked up on buses. They're then sent to the various constituencies. Some of them, mark you, may not even belong to that constituency, but because we do not have any voter ID, they look at the list. They see individuals who may have died or who may have been overseas for many years, and that person shows up. So, for example, Jefferson James might show up as James Brown in my constituency because James Brown, they know, has been dead, or James Brown has been away for many, many years. So when he shows up as James Brown, he's allowed to vote. Now, what has happened is we have challenged those, and that is why people are asking, why did we boycott the last election? Every election, we have challenged those. But our laws are such that when the challenges are made, you still must allow the person to vote because their name is on the list.
Right.
Yeah? So because the name is on the list, even if a challenge is put in by our agents, they must be allowed to vote. We now have to take those challenges to the what do you call those, right after the elections. We now have to take them to there's a specific name, Boston, you can
Election
help.
petitions.
Petition, right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
And this has to be done in a certain period of time. Now, typically, because the judiciary in Dominica is firmly in the back pocket of this prime minister, what has happened is election after election cycle, those petitions are not heard on time. And even when they are heard, they're usually rejected. So our election petitions have not been heard. And it has been a
And the
very
cycle goes on, it continues and continues.
and that's the
Somebody,
reason, exactly. That's the reason why in 2022 we said enough is enough. We
somebody
seek
asked you a question here. Somebody asked you a question here. When was the last voters list purged or updated?
That would have to be the 1980s.
The
Like I said,
1980s?
yeah.
Come
Because I
on,
said
man.
there are persons who are on this list who have been there for over 40 years. So at least 40 years it has not been cleansed. And also, it's really bizarre, and we have been talking about that for many years. In fact, one of the things that we have done every election cycle, for example, we would go through the voters list. We would we would know the persons who we know for sure are dead. We would know the persons who we know for sure have migrated. We would take this to the electoral office, and they would simply ignore it. They would simply, and this has also been the subject of our petitions. What we have now done more recently is that we have taken that to court. We have now, outside of the petition cycle, we recently, with the services of Trinidad, we have actually gone to court to try to basically to sue the Electoral Commission for failing to do this. And part of the problems we have with our Electoral Commission is that the chairperson of our Electoral Commission and the two appointed by government, all of these three individuals are passport vendors. They are selling passports, and as such, they are making everything possible to ensure that this government continues to win. So that is what we are up against. And that is the reason why we see that we have no choice but to take matters into our own hands. We have been failed by the court system. We have been failed by the electoral system. And we are saying now it is important that the people of Dominica stand up and take action. And that's the reason why this thing can go in any direction, because our people are fed up. They've been burnt for many years. They're frustrated, and now they're calling for more drastic action.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If I can come in there quickly, though, Dr.
Sure.
Fountain, yes, Dr. Fountain mentioned in terms of how our parliament is being constituted at this time. And it's first time in our history that our parliament is so weak when it comes to both government side and opposition side. Because what the prime minister did in the last election, he brought in a lot of inexperienced persons in there, inexperienced young people that he could manipulate. He brought them in there. So we have them. So they are not persons who can adequately read those bills and have a very good opinion or the ability to debate it forcefully and well. And the same thing applied to the opposition. And as Thompson explained, I mean, The last election, the opposition boycotted because the election was in 2022. We had one in 2019. And when Sir Dennis Byron, who was hired to do a consultancy on reform, when he indicated to the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition at the time that his report will be ready in the first quarter of 2024, 2023, that was 2023, the Prime Minister ran ahead and called an election, what we call a sham election in 2022, and the opposition boycotted. And he mentioned the independent who ran and two were successful, and so on. I see Dr. Christian said, somebody said I want to thank him. Kudos to brave men and women to thank him. I saw a black man who asked, is the CBI being used to finance the fraud? And I would say yes, because as it stands, there were so millions of dollars, not even billions of dollars is missing in terms of the CBI revenue. And we know that there is a gentleman, the good friend of the Prime Minister, who is all the way out of the region and so forth, and he's controlling that kind of money, and money's come back as kickbacks. Somebody asked in terms of the list, when last it was purged, and I mean, that list has been purged for years. I don't remember the last time this voters list has been purged. And earlier I was talking about the re-registration versus re-confirmation. And we're saying we prefer re-registration, where we scrap the old list and so forth, clean it up, so scrap it, and people will go and re-register. So everybody will get back on the list at the same level, the same value. So the list can reflect the voting people on the island. So quickly, I just to say to you quickly, we're very much disappointed that the regional security system were requested and they were dispersed to come into Dominica. They came in, I think, this morning to come in to add additional power to the police here and to suppress our people, their rights to stand up for what they believe should be in their favor. And I know for a fact that in Barbados you have had several prime ministers before Prime Minister Buckley, and like Tom Adams and Errol Barrow and others who followed them, and they will stand on principal matters. And if they feel that the regional security system was not warranted in any situation, they would not send them. I suspect Mayor Motley has been very loose in this area because Barbados is the headquarters of the regional security system. Another disappointment is we have done several consultancies on the reform issue. We have had the in Dominica, the Freedom Party, UWP, and other groups. There was a group of concerned citizens made up of the church, the unions, the business community, and they did a report. Mayor Motley was called to the bar in Dominica, and she was brought in to call to the bar by the Freedom Party. And we asked Singola Bloomquist to have sponsored her here in Dominica, in the bar here. And Singola Bloomquist was somehow below her level because she's a Queen Counsel, and Singola was an ordinary barrister. So lo and behold, in the court, Tony Astafan stood up and he sponsored her, Tony Astafan. And soon after, she took a consultancy of the government on the reform issue. And her report, we never see that report. I don't know where that report went. But there's a gentleman.
You've never seen it?
We never see that report. There was a gentleman who is called Alec Lawrence, who is presently on the Electoral Commission. And at the time, he said her report did not even worth the waste paper basket.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how they treated it. And after that, you had other reports, and then you had the OS, Commonwealth and CARICOM, who did a consultancy. And when the report was presented, they consulted widely with all the stakeholders. When the report was presented, you find the Attorney General at the time came on the air, and he said it was too expensive and would not be put in place in time for the election, which was in 2019. But they had a couple of years to go in 2019 for that election, so that was not implemented. And when 2019 election came about, The Prime Minister said in Parliament, his first 100 days in his new administration, he will hire an eminent jurist in the region to carry out a consultancy. And all of us knew, and he mentioned Sir Dennis Byron, and we felt Sir Dennis Byron has had some respect in the, in the region in terms of his work in the courts and so forth. And therefore, I mean, although some felt, well, the Prime Minister should not be the one to appoint it, was the Electoral Commission. We debated on that, but we let it go and so on. He did a report, and he himself recognized the situation of the voter ID card. He recognized the situation of the voters list, and he recommended there must be some component of campaign finance and so on. And they ignored all of that. And so, and the Prime Minister, what he did, ignored, we paid a high sum for that. And then he was so in agreement with Sir Byron at the time, he said, he agreed with him to do the draft legislation. And Sir Byron hired some lady who helped him to work in that field. And then the report and the draft legislation was presented. And lo and behold, the Prime Minister threw all of this in the wastepaper basket, or he dumped it somewhere. And he had his Attorney General, a team of other persons doing something new. And that is something new they are in Parliament about, and so on.
Well, if that's something new, I would hate to see what is yet to come. Someone is asking the question, where was Loftus Durad?
Somebody asked me what Loftus Durad? Oh, yeah, I see the question here. Where was Loftus Durad? Well, I mean, he is part of our arrangement, part of the management of the organization, because the Electoral Reform Coalition is made up of all the groups, political parties, and so on and all that. And he was around, yes. But we will not see him visible all the time. But
well, me personally speaking, knowing that Barbados, well, to the international world, Barbados, with our prime servant as well, Miss Mia Moore Motley, folks are looking at her in such a way that is, they give her a lot of praise internationally. And, they say, visit me is one thing, live with me is another. So throughout the Caribbean right now, we look at all the meetings they've had, at least in the last, I'm going to say 5 years, because this didn't, what's happening now did not start now. It didn't start today. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start last week. This was going on. This was building and mounting for quite some time. From what I've heard about even the judicial system in Dominica, with regular cases and how things are such a backlog, everything is seemingly pushed to the back. We're not even going to discuss corruption. Someone said to me today, there's a report on how to gauge countries for corruption. I thought it was interesting, because I was figuring, well, how do you calibrate the level of corruption? What is the litmus test for that? How much money is unaccounted for? But what I was telling the brother is that all that is necessary for evil to flourish, that good people do nothing. What we can no longer do in the Caribbean, whether we are pro-party A or B, we got to start putting people first. It cannot longer be about party. It has to be about people. What's best for the people as a whole? And so that mindset allows us to start to recognize, well, what can we do? What can I do to make a difference? So right now, someone's asking, what's next in Dominica? In terms of after the events of today, that clearly are still ongoing. I don't even want to say next, because from what I understand, there are things still currently going on. And maybe one of y'all could speak to that as well if you choose to, and bring awareness to the events that are, as we speak here now, unfolding. And so where do we go from here?
Yes, Rosie, I can start, or you want to go ahead, Rosie?
Go on, Fonte.
Yes, so where do we go from here? We obviously have a few issues to deal with, one of which was the passage of this legislation, which clearly does not satisfy us, which clearly does not deal adequately with the things that we've seen. One of the things that I talked about earlier was the judicial system. We happened to, through one of our petitions, which was not heard on time, but somehow it made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And although they did not have jurisdiction over it, that's the Caribbean Court of Justice, they were able to offer some opinions, and that was in 2019. And they effectively said that we should never conduct another election with the things that they were able to observe, just based on the evidence that they saw.
Serious.
Justices were very clear. They said that no future election should be held in Dominica with these or similar things. but it was just an opinion. It was not binding.
I
So
would
since then,
say,
we've had an election in 2022.
I
All
would,
right. So it means that this is an ongoing process. And I'm glad I'm talking to a Bajan audience, because we wrote to the Bajan Prime Minister expressing our concern about her readiness to send RSS troops into Dominica to effectively suppress our fundamental rights as Dominicans to peaceful protests. These are universal rights that accrues to Bajans as it is to Dominicans.
wait,
And
wait,
our
hold on
right,
a second. Hold on a second, Mr. Fontaine. Hold on a
yes,
second. Wait a minute. You're telling us that y'all wrote to our prime minister.
yes, we did. Mhm.
You have a copy of that letter? Can you
Yes,
share?
I do. I
You can
do.
forward
I
it
will.
to me.
So yes, I will forward it to you. I'll absolutely forward it to you. We wrote, and one of the reasons why I thought it was important to write to your prime minister, it was to remind her that in
Mhm,
2019,
mhm,
on the eve, the day before our election, an
mhm,
election that the prime minister was already poised to cheat and steal,
mhm,
your prime minister, Mia Motley, sent troops, RSS troops into Dominica. Not only did she send troops into Dominica, but those same individuals descended on one of our strongholds, which is the Salisbury. That's the same area where
mhm,
tonight police are at the home of the former MP. They sent RSS troops there, and they actually opened with live rounds of ammunition on innocent people in that village. Two of our villagers got shot. Several of them got tear gassed in their homes, and
mhm,
subsequently we had several elderly persons died. We believe it was because of those respiratory issues that they suffered at
mhm,
the hands of the RSS troops. So we reminded her of that incident just 3 years ago and told her that she should not be sending troops to Dominica under those false pretexts of this prime minister in Dominica. And yet I'm being told today that they still came. We view this as a hostile act against us, and
mhm,
we are well within our rights to defend ourselves if we are confronted by these individuals. We don't recognize them. We don't want them in Dominica. We are protesting peacefully. Not one individual in our protest today had any weapon. Not one knife, not one cutlass, not one gun. So we are peaceful people. And then to have the police consistently oppressing us, consistently, now with the help of the Barbadian government, is certainly beyond the pale. I've lost quite a lot of respect, quite frankly, for Mayor Motley. I'm a student of Keville. I love Barbados. I've been to Barbados every single year after I left. That's how much I love Barbados. I'm always in Barbados, but I've lost a great deal of respect for Mia Motley, who speaks so eloquently on issues on the rest of the world. But considering our region, she has never spoken out about those things that were highlighted by the CCJ. Yet she finds time to send troops to Dominica to suppress Dominicans. We cannot accept that. We will never accept that. And I just want to bring that out very clearly to the Barbadian public tonight, that
wow.
we are angry, we are dissatisfied with that behavior, and that should not continue. That should not happen again. So what is next? What is next? We'll continue to protest those kinds of actions. We will continue to call the people of Dominica out on the streets, because we believe that is the strength that we have. Strength in unity, the ability to mobilize our base, to get them out on the streets in protest, and which, by the way, is protected by our Constitution. Article 1B of our Constitution provides us with that fundamental right of assembly in peaceful protest. We'll continue to exercise that right. And we want to put the government on notice that we'll continue our, basically our, what we're doing to what we did today,
Mhm,
our
mhm.
dissent to what was passed. We'll continue to ask that whatever laws were passed today are rescinded, and that we have new laws that satisfy the interests and the best interests of democracy in Dominica.
I want to say this. I want to say this, if I can, to you, that the dialogue, one of the things they keep us is apart. And therefore, we would never have known that y'all are petitioning to our prime servant over here, advocating for the rights of people in Dominica that clearly was usurped some time back, using the security forces
Mhm.
um, out of context, probably based on God knows what information, but it was credible or otherwise. And I think that you're right. if you could travel the globe and speak so highly about matters, both local, domestic, and international, including the treatment of Palestinians and whatnot. Well, you know, they no, look, hold on a minute, man. These Caribbean people, man. Let me get straight. Don't home drum beat first. I grew up hearing my grandmother say all the time, home drum beat first. You know, like in an airplane, put on your mask first. If we in the Caribbean don't take the time to recognize that, again, these individuals who claim to represent our best interests do not actually do so with the integrity and the fortitude that is required to do the right thing at the right moment. Somebody asked a question about corruption. I only wanted, like I said, I don't even touch the conversation of corruption, because where would it end? Where would it end? We got to recognize that if we don't hold them accountable, they're going to continue what they've been doing for whatever reason, whether they're being paid to destabilize the region, whether they're being offered some position internationally or otherwise. But it makes no sense where you are in one breath on the international level speaking about injustices and what is not fair to these small island states, which is the term they use, small island states. Meanwhile, in these same small island states, you have Caribbean leaders that are oppressing their very own people right here, and nobody throughout the region is saying nothing. This goes back to the same thing with Haiti and the individuals coming from Kenya and the coalition from the region going over there. I think, again, that we in the Caribbean have enough intellectual property and mentality amongst our people that we could solve our issues ourselves. You know.
Emmanuel, it's not
Yes, yes,
only.
yes.
I mean, your prime minister was the one that was written to most recently because of the RSS. And by the way, last December we stood for the introduction of those bills, and Barbados Coast Guard was in our waters. Secretly, they arrived, yes, and no explanation.
Wait,
So,
wait,
so the
wait.
electoral.
Quick, Esther, hold on a second. You're telling me that Barbados Coast Guards were deployed to come to because they can't do it on their own free will. They just can't.
Exactly.
They were deployed, and you're what? I mean, y'all. What y'all telling me. This sounds crazy.
Yes, last December, and of course, again, you heard the explanation of the RSS and the ERC, that is the Electoral Reform Coalition. Over the last months, we've been writing to them, and the majority of them do not respond. We had the Grenada Prime Minister recently come to Dominica on the platform of the Labour Party, and yet they would support the RSS. They're all enjoying free and fair elections, except for Guyana. We heard recently they also have a bloated list and they have concerns about the election. All the other islands are enjoying electoral reform and free and fair elections, and yet they send their troops to frustrate Dominica, who is fighting for reform that should bring us free and fair elections. I'm talking about your prime minister as a woman who everyone is hailing her, and she's doing well, and head of CARICOM. Not a word on Dominica. Recently they met. On the agenda were things like regional security, food security, climate. I don't understand that we have a security system right here, because the European Union and now US has been one of the as it concerns our CBI program, and yet that is new and critical for them.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Right. So I said, and that's not an issue. They don't see it as something, a subject that should be on their agenda and to discuss. It looks like, every prime minister in the region is just looking to support the other. In fact, this week, a local talk show here host interviewed the former prime minister, Mr. Chasney, and he said that in 2019, when they sent the RSS, he was misinformed. He was misinformed, and when asked what would he advise his colleagues this time around, he said he would ask them to assess the situation on the ground first. Well, they arrived in Dominica on the first flight this morning, whatever flight it was. They arrived very early on Dominica today. I cannot tell you if they showed up at Parliament because they're all in their fatigues and their riot gear, so you don't recognize who is who. But they're certainly on Dominica, and I am sure they're still here tonight as we speak. And
You know,
Caribbean leaders, they seem to be uniting about the restrictions that the U.S. president is placing on them, and the conditions, the Cuban medical workers, and the visa restriction and travel ban and all of that. But right under their noses, there is a big democratic threat for the region. But it seems they're holding Prime Minister Roosevelt's carrot in the palm of their hands, and they're afraid to speak to the issues happening in Dominica. We're talking about a 15 years, a 20-year issue of stealing elections. And it is certainly not over. Hence, your question is a good question. Where do we go from here?
Yes. If I should contribute on this, somebody asked, what's next after today? Well, Thompson speak to it a bit, but what we have decided is to continue the effort, the movement through the ARC and the political parties to unify the people, unify ourselves in an effort now to save our country, because we have been talking for years about reform. We have made some valid suggestion and it has not been taken on board, and they have passed. Nevertheless, these reforms, these bills, without the recommendation made by us and other good people, both local and overseas, to have what you call a comprehensive, genuine set of reforms on our electoral process. So what we plan to do is to continue that movement, sustain the movement, and now our next campaign must be for changing Dominica, and for changing Dominica, Skerrit must go. In other words, we will no longer tolerate him as a prime minister in Dominica, and we'll put the pressure on for him to go and so forth. And I think we want to do quickly a press release to speak to what happened today. And in that press release, we must call strongly for his resignation based on how he has governed in the past and what has happened today outside of our parliament. I see somebody asked about the question of Tony Astafan. Tony Astafan.
But both, Mr. Johnson, before we go there, can we speak to that video that Emmanuel is playing now? And we'll go back to yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that's a journalist right there in the yellow shirt, and she has crossed the police barrier where other journalists are, including two journalists of the national radio station. But yet this police officer is harassing her. You notice he pulled her tripod. He pulled her tripod and he's trying to get her out from that area. And Dominica is not pleased about this at all. And it looks like a discrimination because she's taking the information to the world. The journalist of the national radio station, which does not allow the voices of opposition at all, especially during election campaigns. And here they are. Here is the officer mishandling the female journalist. And
telling her, I guess,
against her because she's not
allowed.
She
wasn't allowed to film certain things.
Well, she was filming, but notice they're escorting her out of the area. Whereas there were two journalists from the national radio station. They were not filming, but she's a journalist on Dominica.
Wow.
Okay, so
that's
what
what happened in there.
I was saying, in connection with the question from Tony Astafan, though, Tony Astafan is a strong supporter of the Labour Party and also Skerrit as an individual, and he is very much opposed to good things in Dominica, and he's one of those persons who have divided the country and has caused all of this chaos in the electoral reform struggle or exercise, because when a set of commissioners were working on cleaning the list and doing the work they were supposed to be doing, and they had written to the various political parties to indicate to them what they were doing and their support and so forth, which we all agreed on. Then Tony Astafan wrote an email to the Prime Minister to say that madness is taking place at the electoral commission office, and if you do not interfere or pay attention to it, it will affect your winning legacy. And from since that time, all of these division have started and manipulation has started. The sad thing about him, though, is that he support the government, but he don't live in Dominica. He lives in Antigua. He can't exist there. I mean, if you support the government and your government is doing well for the country, then you better live under your government and show the example. But he's living outside of Dominica, but he stays outside and direct things with Roosevelt's care. So that's what it is. And of course, the level of corruption in the government is really, a big sore that is affecting the growth of the country. Yeah.
Well, let me ask a question here, Mr. Fontaine, as well. With all the Caribbean leaders looking on, especially now with CARICOM and whatnot, even tonight, or even if they were absent today, when they wake up in the morning and get their updates from their whatever, what do you expect now coming from your Caribbean colleagues regarding what has happened today?
Well, quite frankly, not much, because they're well aware of what has been going on in Dominica over those many years. Every time we've been writing to CARICOM, we've been explaining to them the situation, and not one word in CARICOM, not one word of condemnation. Even after the CCJ came up with this damaging report or opinion on the election process in Dominica, CARICOM never saw the need to address this issue. So we don't expect them to do anything differently. As we indicated to Prime Minister Motley, we indicated that there was no crisis in Dominica. There is no state of emergency declared. There is no threat to security in Dominica, nor on a national level. So why, on a regional level, so why it is that you're so eager to send regional troops into Dominica? This makes no sense to me, and I don't expect much from our Caribbean leaders. I believe what we have is a kind of old boys network, and now a woman, where they simply protect each other, and they find solace in protecting each other, and that really should not be. Our Caribbean leaders should be bold enough, especially when the evidence is so glaring, when the evidence is so overwhelming. They should have the decency to address those issues, even within CARICOM. And quite frankly, our people have very little faith in this CARICOM institution, and even less faith in those Caribbean leaders.
Well, I'll tell you one thing as far as Caribbean leaders. I think the Caribbean right now is in need of some serious reform. And the World Bank recently said that the education in Caribbean is in crisis. And I keep telling people, when they said that, traditional mindset would think they're referring to the man or the woman on the street that might be illiterate and didn't finish school. But I beg to differ, because despite all the degrees we have through all these leaders, none of the Caribbean leaders have been able to lift the Caribbean territory that they're in charge of out of the state of poverty, of corruption, of all the different wrongdoings. None of them have been capable of doing so. So I'm not sure what kind of education they was given or they're working with, because if you think about it, none of them have resolved any of the issues plaguing the region. It is up to us, the people who see these issues and come together, work together across these imaginary borders that's placed with us. I keep saying, I'm going to say it again, the water does not divide us. It is our bridge that unites us. And we must start to travel amongst each other territories, create our own trade routes, create our own food security and food sovereignty. It's an absolute must. And if we wait on these Caribbean, and I don't even know if I could call them leaders, these appointed individuals, these managers, these administrations, to make things happen, well, we might be waiting in vain, quite frankly. And I don't think our children and our children's children have that as an option. You talk about the sanctions from Trump in terms of St. Lucia and St. Kitts. That's going to have some serious implications for businesses, small and large, and therefore will have a ripple effect across the region. The question is, are we paying attention now? That's the question. Are we paying attention? I like to think that people right now, the viewers who are watching, those who are tuned in, again, take a minute, send this to a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend, like, share, whatever the case is, get the message across, because in reality, the voice of the voiceless will only be heard if those who hearing it shares it. Because I never even knew that Dominica was reaching out. In fact, I knew Dominica kicked out a particular political, what do you call himself? Analyst some years ago from Barbados. I won't call any names, but I know he was kicked out for the madness he was talking in Dominica, and I agree with Dominica. But I did not know that Dominica is appealing to Barbados for assistance and falling on deaf ears. Well, Barbados is listening to you tonight. I want y'all to share some more thoughts and insights. What can we, the people of the region, do to assist this effort in Dominica?
I would add by saying that the people of the region has to pay attention now to the leaders and the kind of leaders that we elect. I remember in the early days, you had leaders who stood up for Caribbean people, and even they were together as colleagues in the OECS in CARICOM. What they did at that time, when something was going wrong in a particular country, they stood up and had it corrected, and they speak to it, and it was changed. I remember when Walter Rodney was killed in Guyana, then Desmond Hoyt was then president, and Guyana had a system of abuse and a system of, violence and so on. And the CARICOM leader spoke and said Desmond Hoyt had to change his ways based on how Caribbean people are being treated, Guyans are being treated. And there was even suggestion to remove the CARICOM secretariat from Guyana. And he immediately took action and, remedied some of the situation that was going on in Guyana of abuse to political opponents and so on. Today, what we see in our leaders is like a boys and girl club. And they meet, they speak, and they come with fancy words. But in terms of the nitty-gritty of Caribbean people for their survival, that is not being addressed, not being paid attention to, and so forth. Because they feel then you can abuse your country. We meet in CARICOM or OECS and we clap and drink and laugh and so on, and that's all.
That's
and
it.
And the Caribbean people now are being abused because, what is happening to us today, we are at the level of the Electoral Reform Coalition. We have written to every prime minister in the region. We have written to the OAS, the Commonwealth, the CARICOM Secretariat, and we copy to prime ministers in the region. And in all fairness, when we send to Barbados, we get an immediate reaction of your letter was received and blah, blah, blah.
No, that is automatic. That's
automatic. That's we get that. But I feel like nothing else, and so on. And when we're saying, you may not want to be physically engaged, but the things you can do to prevent abuse of people in the Caribbean, you have to do it. And I'm very disappointed, to say the least, with the behavior of these prime ministers and the fact that we are talking of simple thing, electoral reform. We wrote to our prime minister several times to meet with him and the electoral commission. We went to our president. The president gave us a hearing. We met with her and we discussed matters, and she heard us, she said. But the prime minister have never spoken to us. The prime minister, have never invited us to any meeting with him as persons who are in the society, as civil society groups and political party groups to discuss, so we can have what we call an amicable solution to this electoral reform issue. And
but also, if I could add, Boston, I think that's very important, beyond the government, in terms of what the people of the region can do. I think sometimes we treat the region as we ourselves within the region, we behave as if we're strangers. We,
True,
for
true,
example, you
true.
hear a lot in the Bajan press about Dominica when there's a hurricane. But
Yes,
as soon as the help comes and so on, it's over. Then that's it.
that's
That's
it.
why I applaud your efforts tonight to have us on, because it allows the Bajan public to hear from us what is going on. Some of the issues I'm sure they were not aware of. They may not have been aware that there was a decision of the CCJ. They would have been aware of the behavior of the Prime Minister as it relates to Dominica. So just the ability of the press to allow us more access to the audiences in Barbados, I think that will help. And then the Bajan people, astute as they are, I'm sure that they will make agitation to the government on our behalf. So that aspect, I believe, is critically important in helping us, extend that conversation and be able to relate to and really, bring out what's going on. Because sometimes we feel in Dominica that we're completely isolated. We feel at times that the region does not care about us. We are the if you like the stray kid of the family. Yeah, we are CARICOM family, but Dominica is way down there.
Out there by itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we feel sometimes, like an orphaned child sometimes, and
Wow.
I believe that a lot more can be done within the region to encourage it. And part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that we've never really established this whole question of regional travel. We don't travel enough between the
Mhm.
islands. We don't appreciate enough. I mean, I have a great appreciation for Barbados, but I went to school there, and I've been gone to university. I got a great appreciation for Bajan culture and for the country, and I love it. But not enough people have that exposure. And I believe that if we are able to open up better links within the Caribbean region, we're able to visit more frequently, have those exchanges. I think that will go a long way. So what I'm arguing for is more of a real Caribbean integration kind of thing, where people we have those exchanges, whether through business
Mhm.
or work or school exchanges, but do a lot more of that so that we can get better appreciation for what is going on in each other's territories.
Well, I want to add to what you're saying, also to what Mr. Boston was adding, and Queen Esther. Uh, Dominican National Congress is just an idea. You could think about it as it is, connected with Antigua National Congress and St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad, Barbados, now, and have a regional congress. Although CARICOM is supposed to be the platform for such an idea and unifying the region, that might be on a political level or political class. See, the people that you represent, the people on the ground, the people that feel it the most, the everyday individual, the mother, the father, the children, the people that make it work. Those are the people that we got to start connecting and creating our own way forward. Because again, if we simply sit back and wait for the individuals who claim, and I'm using that word very loosely, to have our best interests at heart, man, we how long we been waiting now? And so although they keep telling you, well, hold on a little longer, hold on a little longer, all I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with waiting if that's what you're waiting for. I'm simply saying, like the Bible says, in the meantime, it's okay to wait for Christ to return, but he also said to work until I come. So what we cannot do is sit on our hands and simply figure they'll figure it out. We, the people of the region, we, the people of those that were taken, we, the ones who are here now, we're not the descending ones anymore. We're the ascending ones. We have to put order and restore order to the level it needs to be restored to. Because again, someone I wrote, the fox garden, the hen house, when you start missing chickens, you ain't gotta look far. It's going to be pretty obvious. Queen Esther, what are your thoughts on the unification of the region and what the region needs to do to assist Dominica and each other really at this point in time? You might have to unmute there. Should be a little button down there somewhere.
Yes,
There you go.
yes. So yes, there are a variety of groups, including this UN Caribbean Women, and you have the parliamentary grouping, and we heard your prime minister speak the other day to integrity, and people are moving away from those values. If our prime ministers and leaders are sticking to those core values, and that would make their leadership very valuable and meaningful. That would help. We have universities across the Caribbean, not only UWI universities. What are we teaching the generation of scholars, that are graduating? I have this thing saying, sometimes people question the intelligence of people, and why do they support corruption? Why do they support injustice? I'm saying education is not righteousness.
True.
Education is not righteousness. But yet, if our graduates, our those with whatever first degree or even doctoral degrees, coming out of universities and coming to be our leaders, but yet we are not making that progress that we ought to be making in the Caribbean. I see us as sister countries, and Dominica and St. Lucia, for example, I like to compare the two, grew up as two sister countries. We both got a good upbringing from our parents. St. Lucia took off, and see where Dominica is. St. Vincent has a leader for a 20-year period as well, or 30 years. And as a nurse, I've listened to the complaints of nurses in St. Vincent, and they're not in a better place than those in Dominica. St. Vincent is not into the CBI program. We are. What about when each leader would pull up the other when they meet in their sessions, in the CARICOM sessions or the OECS sessions? If there were a love for integrity and justice, that is what is needed. That is, in the absence of that, I don't see the leaders and even the people, because we can let our voices be heard on your program, on social media, but if our heart is not into a love for the people, a love for justice, an appreciation of our Black people that were once under slavery, people are now among our leaders are asking for compensation from Europe for slavery. Reparation, right. But we have a new slavery going on, and the same leaders who are asking for reparation are the ones into that new slavery. They are Black leaders. So if our young ones, would teach them against civics back in the school and at university level, that would help a new generation demand more of our leaders. Today, after as we rounded up that video that clip you just showed, we were rounding up after everything and the roads had been cleared. We decided to walk through that very area that was blocked, and I'm thinking today there were nine women parliamentarians, and I do not know if the opposition, the one opposition woman, I do not know if she voted for this bill, but I am sure the other 8 on government side voted. Naturally, they will always vote. And it's like women during the COVID period, people looked up to the women leaders. And we just celebrated International Women's Day, and the struggle it took for women to even get in parliament. And 8 women sat in parliament today and voted for reform bills that are insufficient, but worse than that, that would assist in stealing of elections in Dominica. Women Whether we are single or not, we play a very pivotal role in our families, in raising our children, and the honesty. And if they go to school and they come with something that's not their own, we ask them, where did you get it? We want our children to account. And our women go in parliament today, 8 of them at least, and support um, electoral reform bills that are promoting a lack of integrity in elections. What if Prime Minister Mia Motley would speak to that? That would be of great benefit. If the women parliamentarians in the region would speak to that, that would help us. It hurt my heart also as I passed by, and there were 2 women who were boasting, and they said, you all can do what you want, but the bills have been passed. Well, I know these women have been bribed and they're blind, because what the scripture says about people who have received bribe, it's perverts the cause of justice. So it's a handful of people actually. Many more who could have come out with us today did not come out. But the majority of Dominicans are not happy. And if our the population, the citizenry of the other countries would speak up with us, not just on social media and Facebook, but if their voice could be heard on mainstream media and in groups where they meet, in official groups where they meet, I believe that would help us. And if it doesn't help our generation, but at least our children and the generations to come.
Well, I want to say to you, we started out saying earlier, we want to basically express thanks for those of you, those brave citizens who came out today and shared their experience basically of what's been going on. I can't begin to imagine when I think about, what would have happened today. Because again, when people talk about the Caribbean, no one thinks about the Caribbean in terms of what we are witnessing unfold. We hear Caribbean, people think of turquoise water, think of fruits, think of tourism. When you hear Dominica, in fact, I want to shout out the Dominica, because I was in a meeting recently, well, not that recent, but recent enough. When they talked with agriculture and what was going on in Dominica regarding, building back agriculture, especially post hurricane, and getting farmers back up and running. Although I'm sure more can be done, there was some progress being made at some level. And so again, as someone who's interested in agriculture and food security, especially in the region, Dominica started to rise again. In fact, when Vincent was having some challenges after the volcano and also the barrel, Dominica was the one supplying. Let me tell you all this in case people don't know. Dominica have been supplying food to Barbados very recently, regarding the last 6 months comfortably. And so Barbados again owes a debt to Dominica for supplying the island with food, because Barbados ain't growing that kind of food. Let me talk facts. So like you said, we need to connect with each other across the region to see how we can promote sustainability, because without that, what are we going to have? I mean, what would we have? We don't have anything. As far as what's going on in Parliament in Dominica, yes, it affects what goes on in Barbados, what goes on in Antigua, what goes on in St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad, even down to Guyana. We are all, even going as far as across to Jamaica, although we separate the Antilles. My point is, we have to start to look for ways to strengthen each other, even if we could create our own states in the sense and deal with the quote unquote the government, well, the administrators of these so-called countries on a certain level, because as you said, they speak about injustices on the world stage. They advocate for reparations and the wrongdoings and what had happened in how many centuries ago. In the same breath, in their own backyards, we have a number of atrocities taking place, and no one is addressing any of that challenge, all the challenges that we are facing. We could go from education, we could talk about crime, we could talk about food scarcity, we could talk about inflation, we could talk about the silent recession. I mean, there's a number of things we could speak to, and still, here we are now, having to dodge tear gas, and rubber bullets. Give us some parting thoughts. We're gonna have to do a part two on this for sure, but give us some parting thoughts as to where do we go from here, because that's what's important. Because after today's event, this isn't going to just go away, sweep it under the rug. Mr. Fontaine, your hands are now going to be full, because people are going to start looking and think, well, if this could happen to this small group of individuals unprovoked, imagine what's next. Is that
Yeah.
you agree or you'll be silenced? Tell us some thoughts.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, even while you were speaking, we just learned of more arrests being made from today's activities. So
Wow.
it is clear that the police they are not satisfied in their first to somehow satisfy Skerritt's command, because it has to be coming from him somehow, or they feel that they're doing him a service. They're going after individuals, and as I said, our protest today was protected by free speech. We'll continue to behave under the protection of our constitution fearlessly. We believe in the end we will win this battle, because we are on the side of right, and as long as it will take, we will get there. We'll have a task ahead of us, because after today's activities, it will really be a balancing act as leaders, because there are people who will be putting a lot of pressure on us to go the militant route,
Mhm.
and others who will be probably calling for a more nuanced or more balanced approach to the whole thing. So that's something that we need to balance as leaders. But one thing we'll continue to do is to lead the effort to call for electoral reform. We'll continue to call people out in political meetings, in demonstrations, and do what is necessary to apply pressure on this government. We'll continue to appeal to our neighbors and anyone else who will listen to us to see how they can assist. But I think at the end of the day, what we need to ensure is that the countries that, for example, are assisting the government and that have assisted. When I say assisted, for example, we brought to the attention of the United States government what has been happening with the charter flights from their territory. We believe that that is something that there could be direct intervention on the part of the authorities. The US government, for example, should be able to intervene and deny a plane leaving the United States to come to Dominica with the express purpose of usurping our democracy. There must be something in law that allows the US government to prevent that flight from leaving the country. So that's the kind of intervention that we're looking for. That if we fail at the level of just the legislation, that we can have that input from governments that understand what is going on and take a deeper interest in what is going on in Dominica. Beyond that, we hope that conversations like the ones we're having tonight will influence some thinking within the Caribbean region, and will hopefully get some action from CARICOM, although I'm not holding my breath. But one way CARICOM can act, for example, is that when a member state is in such obvious, is not in conformity,
Crisis.
in such obvious non-conformity
That's
to
right.
democracy and to the ideals of a CARICOM region, CARICOM must have the moral authority to take some kind of action against this country until they conform. And I hope that that thinking can begin to start within CARICOM. I hope it does. I hope it does, because today's Dominica, today's another country. But we must be able to, as a political organization, be able to take some sanctions against countries that refuse to toe the line, that countries that are basically going rogue, as we see
Yes.
nowadays at this time.
Yes, I have to agree, especially the latter part you said, countries going rogue. If we do not stand and draw a line, I'm telling you that you said today Dominica, tomorrow somewhere else. As we speak, there's wars and rumors of wars in Guyana and Venezuela in the south. So we have Dominica in the north, the countries in the south. We knows what's going on across the region. They're trying to rebuild the Union Islands, Calicut, St. Vincent was happening. Again, St. Lucia being sanctioned, Antigua, St. Kitts. The whole idea is to destabilize the unification of what they consider the sixth region, or what they call the diaspora. All of these new terms are coming out. But in reality, people are recognizing that the region is starting to have dialogue amongst themselves. I know there are other individuals who meet almost every weekend, having Zoom meetings, other meetings, having conversations, trying to find ways to connect dots. And I'm saying that to say that all of these things are happening again to keep us divided. And once we are divided, it's easy to conquer. Like you said, you would think that the CARICOM leaders, you would think that people who are involved in CARICOM would see these atrocities going on across the region and draw a line and say, so far and no further, thus far and no further. But guess what? Like you said, they're silent. And I personally, I mean, the rest of the people who are going to view this, who are on the live now, and the rest who are going to, the hundreds who are going to watch it later, even probably the thousands, who would have thought that you were appealing to our prime servant, Miss Mia Moore-Motley, for help? The funny thing is, she had no problem sending the RSS at the time when it wasn't needed. And now that it is even needed to intervene to bring justice to democracy. Well, here it is now that we're not hearing anything. I know Miss Motley is tuning this program. Believe they all tune in. They don't want to admit it, but we know this tuning because we see the results of that. And I know right now phone calls are already being made. My thing is, I sincerely hope that she's watching, and I guarantee you're going to hear something in the next couple of days. You're going to hear something. Because this
sorry, let me just make a quick clarification.
Sure, go ahead.
We appealed to her not to send the RSS, given the last experience
on
that
this
we had in
occasion.
2019. So our appeal, after the Prime Minister activated the RSS, we appealed to Mia Motley not to go ahead with it, because we felt that the presence of the RSS would be as repressive as it was the last time.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're saying that she listened this time, is what you're suggesting?
I'm saying that she did not listen because we are told that they still arrived in Dominica, and that to me is unacceptable.
Is unacceptable. Well, you know what? I agree with you, and I like to think that if she did do that and she did deploy them, that she can come now and make it clear what did you do, and if so,
on
why
what
did you
basis? On what basis?
on what basis? Correct. On what basis? And so,
yeah.
From what I've been hearing though, and what is clearly obvious, Dominica's been a failed state at this point for some time. The people of Dominica is who's keeping Dominica up. As far as the administrators, they've been rogue, clearly.
Absolutely.
They've been rogue. So why is it that no one, the other Caribbean so-called leaders, are saying and doing what they're supposed to do? Do you think at this point, like you said, it's an old boys club, and well, male and female? Okay, maybe I wouldn't touch that any further. You think it's a point where now that if we the people sit down and do nothing, they'll say we love it? Or do we take this to the next level? Because if there's, and I say this with caution, by the way, let me just put that here clear. I say this with caution. If this is the response, and I'm going to play a video I played earlier for the viewers who are now coming in, I'm going to say viewer discretion is advised again, and there's language and some scenes of violence. I'm going to put that in early. If what I'm about to show you is an indication of where we're at in Dominica and across the region, because I'm telling you, different things happen across the islands. We don't know the circumstances. They'll say they'll look into stuff. It appears to be unprovoked. Nevertheless, I'm sure they'll have a different story. But if this is what's going on at this point, what's next, family? I mean, what's next? What's next?
Yeah, that's a good question. We very well could be witnessing extrajudicial killings and all the rest of it. That may just be the beginning of a very slippery slope with that kind of behavior that I saw on display today.
Well, for the viewers, like I said, go ahead, brother.
Yes, and I mean, if the police, even up to now, they're on a rampage of arresting people without the necessary investigation and so forth as to what is the reason for this arrest, it tells you if we're not careful and take these things into account, we might just end ourselves into a situation where people may just disappear for having a different view over another person or political party or government and so on. And I think we as Caribbean people, we have to stick together. We have to voice our opinion on our own national and other media platform and houses to demonstrate that while something happens to, say, Barbados or in Dominica or wherever that is not right, we can, in our own country, stand and condemn it. the media in these islands could be very active to pick up this news and share it, disseminate this news among the regional people so they know what is going on. And they can have a view, they can have a say in the matter to know that as a Caribbean, we are all standing for one another. And the difficulty in many of these islands these days is that they have allowed food production and these things to fall, and they feel the only thing that to depend on to keep on the economy is passports, selling passports. And the passport situation, if it's not being done properly, it puts us into trouble. I mean, we have to get a visa to go to Britain before you could just board a plane, have your little bag and your passport, and you move. No, you have to apply. And if these visas are very expensive, and the application form is very complex, and so on. So
I have. Sorry, no, go ahead. I want to address this comment here. Short. Go ahead. Finish up.
Yeah. So in that case, when the Caribbean does things that are not in conformity with the international community, and where people are picked up with passports of one country or the other, and these people, come across as terrorists and this kind of thing, it affects us in the region. It affects us, and,
Yes.
and therefore this kind of situation really, ruin our economy, because when there is a something pass on the Caribbean, it's been all of us are in it. And sometimes what you see happen is that they put a downgrade and probably put a collar and so on to show where we at. And sometimes these governments and these prime ministers are not themselves so sensitive to those issues, because it don't affect them, it affects ordinary people. And I think there must be a fight to ensure that ordinary people in the Caribbean are able to survive, to work, earn their living. Another thing I think we should do, though, is to see each other as countries where we could go on a vacation. Some people feel, well, if I don't go to the United States or Great Britain or somewhere in Europe, I haven't had a vacation. And I think
the regional travels.
So we need to spend our money in the region so we can build ourselves and maintain our hotels from ourselves. But sometimes we look at other places as being the areas that we must go and spend our money, when these places themselves are harassing you and creating issues for you to even get into their own country. And I think this is something the Caribbean people must stick together and must resolve. And I think the politics of the Caribbean, only now I see Trinidad is saying that they will get out of the CCJ. I mean, a court is in their own country, rent is being paid, and they ignore and go to the CCJ. Now they have to get a blow of visa to say, I will withdraw from the CCJ.
That speaks volumes. Speaks volumes. The young lady is asking here, Aisha Carbon, how you preventing citizens of Dominica to come at their home? I suppose that refers to the comment about flying in on private jets and whatnot. I don't think anyone was really trying to stop Dominicans from coming home, but it's a bit. My sister, you could admit it's a bit nefarious when a prime servant will go out their way and spend millions of dollars on resources just to bring people in to ensure that he maintains his position of power, as opposed to allowing a natural democratic process of people who are actually interested to be a part of a process that is fair and balanced. We're speaking to the imbalance and the unfair but clear biasness of one's actions. I'm sure that a political leader spending millions of dollars, the question is that his own money he's spending to bring these people in? Is it the government? Is it taxpayers' money he's spending to fly people in? And I'm sure that if you were looking at it from an objective standpoint, from that perspective, I am sure you would agree. So no one is, well, personally, I'm not suggesting it. I didn't think any of my panelists here suggested that we're trying to put out a sanction and stop Dominicans from coming home. What we are suggesting is that there's a nefarious action going on by the individual who's the current prime servant, spending money. We don't know if it's campaign funds collected or personal or otherwise, read between the line.
Yeah, but,
so
but
that's what we're speaking.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly know in terms of the person saying that we want to prevent citizens from
Just for clarity.
Yeah, that is just not what we're talking about. What we're saying, we have a proviso in our laws that says, and most of the Caribbean islands have, if you're out of the country for more than 5 years uninterrupted, you ought not to come back and vote. And we're saying that you can have a government now that has a law to protect and encouraging you to break the law. That's what we're saying. And we're saying that If you are on the voters list and
Mhm.
you're so interested in the election of your country, where of your birth, and you're interested, pay your own way and come in and participate. You should not get gifts because none of us in Dominica get gifts to vote. We get it from our bed. And the same
Mhm.
happens to Barbados. You get in your bed, you make your prayer, you take your coffee, whatever you take, and you go in line and you vote. Why should some people have a special, you know, side dish there? So that, if I want to put it that way, to come home and vote. And then what may happen is, I know a particular constituency where the Labour Party was looking at, the number of voters there, and the opposition candidate was leading by 200 votes. She could have won that seat by about 200 votes, and they brought 250 votes, 350 votes in that constituency, and she lost. And you're saying you live in a country where you see things are not working for you, agriculture is down, jobs is not available, and so forth, and you're struggling, and somebody who may make a difference can win a seat. And then you just bring in people now who have been out for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and you haven't seen them for years, and you don't see them coming, and they cast a vote and they go back, and then you don't have to live under what they put on you. That's not fair, really.
It's not fair. And also, just quickly, the irony of ironies is that some of these are some of the very same individuals
Mhm.
who ran away from the country under this government
Mhm.
because they could not find employment, they could not find an opportunity. So they go overseas, they have better lives for themselves, and they return to keep the same oppressive government on the backs of the people. It's
Mhm.
not fair. It's not right.
Agreed. Totally agree. Totally agree. And I'm sure that most of the viewers here are going to agree with you. And again, I don't think what you're asking for is unfair and somehow biased to your own agenda. I think you're putting people ahead of the idea that we should maintain this order. If it was that everything was going according to plan in terms of equality across the board, well, the reality is there's always going to be the haves and the have-nots. And I think at this point, the idea of most political parties and these leaders are looking to create that even more divide between those who have and those who have nothing or less, because it's easier to control the people when they're begging. You see, much easier because a begging individual in some cases may do any and anything you ask because their position is what it is. So again, I think we all said it tonight. The idea is to build resources, start to tap into our own. Someone asked earlier if you all ever looked at a different conventional way of governance. Rather than relying on the traditional system, simply establish your own governing body amongst the people from a standpoint of sovereign. Because in reality, what can they say? You have X amount of individuals you're allowed to step up and have your own independent state as it is. Because each one of us as an individual is a state. Of course, they don't tell you that much, but especially as a republic, um, you are a state. So when you deal with the government, you're dealing with it from an independent standpoint as a nation within yourself and your household. So we got to start rethinking our approach to governance. Because if we continue the Westminster program, well, you know, Queen Esther spoke on it earlier. We can't, we can't, we can't say we want off the plantation while asking for comfort on the plantation. We got to make up our minds if we want off or we want comfortability. The line is clear. It's not a blurred line. It's very clear, and we can't be like the Laodiceans. We can't straddle the fence. We got to pick a side. Pick a side. Give us some closing thoughts for now, family. And this is part one. I go and label it part one.
Well, I'm very happy today with what we accomplished by putting on the record that we're not happy with the reform bills that have been passed in our parliament. Um, it's unfortunate we have the police, have brutalized some people in defense of one man who wants to remain in power. As we heard him in a clip, um, he was out in St. Martin last night, and we heard him. It was supposed to be a meet and greet, and we heard him tell the Dominicans in St. Martin that he's going to be in power until God comes back to judge the earth. And
Wow.
so the police in Dominica and the RSS who on standby made it their main responsibility to protect that legacy of Roosevelt Skerrit. while the citizenry, just abide with that law that he has passed. But this is not the end. This is not the end. We're proud of the many people who came out, and that journalist there, that female journalist there, who was ruffled by the inspector, and we encourage that we still have work to do. You can say, yes, they passed the bill, as these women boasted, but the in local parlance we say the bad is not our bad, it's their bad. What we did, we stood up, and we stood up proudly. And there will come a time, when we will reverse that bill. We'll repeal what is not right in it, and we'll add what we want in it. So it is not over until it's over. Thank you so much to you and Lloyd Pascal, who has linked us to get the word out, and to all your Barbados listeners, and those of our colleagues who have joined and messaging us in support. We're very grateful. And the region must rise. The region must not only unite when a storm comes. Come next hurricane season, God forbid a hurricane gives us a blast again, and all these countries will come and send aid. It will be welcomed. But our needs are not only physical needs. We have psychological needs. And after 15 years of psychological, economical, social, and political abuse, and our sister countries, instead of standing up with us, they are sending their troops to put us down. It's a shame on CARICOM. It's a shame on the chairman of CARICOM. Our countries our leaders must rise, and we're supporting each other in more ways than one. Climate change and food security, all those things are important. But our democracy is important. And I like what you said. We must use our bridges to unite us for what is best for us, not just for our leaders.
No,
for
the people,
us and
the
our
people.
children yet conceived.
Yes.
I thank you so much, and I thank my colleagues.
I see somebody has a question about, do Dominicans have to get a permit to protest? Well, in our laws, it made provision for people to assemble. You can assemble in our laws. If you're going to have a demonstration, or if you're going to have a match on the street, then obviously you have to, 3 days before the event, you have to write to the police and inform them. Once we have an event, and that event we had write to the police almost a month before to tell them. And the date was going to happen. We had a prominent trade unionist who was bearing that day. You had Parliament, you had a tourist. So what we did, we postponed it to another time, and we wrote the police and told them we had postponed to another time. That was probably about 2-3 weeks before. And the police gave us the permission the day of the event. So that's crooked.
Did they give permission, or they just supposed to? Because you're right, for security reasons, not because
I like that. I like that, Mr. Forte. I like that question. Yeah,
that's important. You see, because the right to protest, the right to assemble is enshrined in the Constitution. You don't need any authority for that.
Not asking for permission.
But it makes sense to ask them in order to provide protection, court control, traffic control, and so on. But you don't need to inform them.
I like that. I like that, because that's always been my position. I don't, and I mean, yes, people do quote unquote right for permission. I don't see how you protesting and you're seeking permission. That almost is contradictory by nature.
Exactly.
It shows, again, ignorance of the law. This is one of the other issues we don't fully grasp, because in reality, and I told someone this before when we were planning, going back to the COVID situation, and we were organizing a particular movement here as well. My thing was language. We're not protesting anything. We're having a walk. There's no law in any book that says I can't meet my brother Fontaine, my sister Esther, and my brother right here. There's no law that say I can't meet y'all down the road and let's walk and have a conversation.
Exactly.
There's no law saying that. Whether it is 5 people, 10 people, 1,000 people, there's no law that say you cannot be in a particular space at any point in time. And so I think we got to stop first giving power where there's none.
There's
But
none, absolutely.
for ourselves. We're not out there disorderly. We're not going out there pelting and burning and all this kind of stuff. We're out there simply as a people, simply saying, thus far and no further. And so the writing is on the wall, family. Those who have eyes to see, let them see. And those who have the ears to hear, let them hear. We're living in a different time. I mean, rust not against flesh and blood. You know, we know what we're dealing with, those who claim to know. And again, somebody mentioned earlier about the Christians. You know, they sit back and they watch these things, and you would think that the Christians would be the first ones out making noise for the simple fact that most of them say they're going to heaven. You should have no concern about life or liberty outside of the fact that you're supposed to stand up for what is right, according to the teachings of the Christ. And that's not to me to point a finger. I'm simply saying it to say that if you deny Christ and what he stood for, according to the Bible, you too shall be denied. I can't think of a better way as an individual who represents divine order, but to stand up for those and be the voice of the voiceless and do what is right, especially in the face of adversity. Because like the 3 Hebrew boys, we're not bowing. We're not going to bow. If you're going to light the fire, go ahead and light the fire. We don't have a problem with that. In fact, we are so confident in our Creator that we'll walk in and walk out. And even if we don't walk out, we are still confident that where we will find ourselves in the hereafter will be a better place. And that's the mindset we have to have, especially as African people, knowing that we stand on the backs of those who came before us, those who stood up and granted us the liberation that we now take so for granted. I don't want to belabor the point, but go ahead, Brother Benston. Give us a thought, your parting thought.
Well, I want to thank you, of course, for having us with you tonight and for this very open and honest discussion. I mean, we're engaging this thing not for personal reason, but to ensure that we live in a country that is peaceful, loving, where we could extend a hand to our neighbors, a friendship to our neighbors, and they could do the same to us. And as I mentioned earlier on, I mean, we can create that level of exchange, and we can ourselves become tourists from Dominica to Barbados, and same things apply. Rather waiting for these white tourists to come and so forth, we can do that ourselves and build our
Caribbean. That's
yeah,
right.
our Caribbean and ourselves, and we're doing it for us, really, because when the tourists from North America and from Europe stop coming, then we have a big issue. But if we as Caribbean people choose ourselves or various countries as vacation spots, then obviously we can continue to spend our dollars and things like that in these islands. So, and also I want to thank the Barbadian listeners who are tuning to you tonight and other persons in the region and further afield, because I mean, this is where we got the information. And I always say an informed people will make informed decisions. Mm-hmm. And tonight we are pleased that we could come with you and explain what we are fighting for, what we stood up for today, and what we'll continue to do going forward. Because if a government has become rotten and willing to serve and listen to the people, obviously the people have to make decisions to remove them. And the only reason why we have this government on our back is because they have the advantage as the incumbent to exploit the loopholes and to use millions of dollars in their campaign and to buy votes. And if you can buy people overseas to bring them in to break the law, it tells you we have a very distasteful and dishonest group of people in government. And I mean, they are our brothers and sisters as well. We have no hate against them, but they were elected to do the right thing to grow the economy and improve the social and economic well-being of citizens. So thank you so much. God bless you all, and God bless the people of Barbados, and God bless you. Good night.
Well, yes, I want to thank you all personally as well. Again, I say having the courage, because I know when you come up front in front of this lens and you start to speak on matters, I know all too well how some are disrupted and they spend the nights up planning and plotting to see how they could stop you from doing what you do. Mm-hmm. But our strength is in the Almighty. Our strength is in the Creator. Our confidence comes from knowing what God's plan is for our life. We're not worried about what they're talking about, what they planning and plotting, because what somebody said it, their day is going to come. So,
Absolutely.
all of us, not even the dog that piss on the wall of Babylon going to escape in these times. We're living in a different day, family. And I think Brother Fontaine said it, the Caribbean needs to come together and do more than just come together. And Sister Queen also said it, we need to rise. And it is our time to rise. We can't see ourselves as the, what they call it, third world. Keep in mind, right, that, what a first world is loss. If we take for granted our sand, our fruits, walking barefoot, the rain, the smell of the soil, we take that so for granted because they have us thinking that we should progress. We need all this other stuff. We need all this other stuff. And in reality, we should try to stay far from it as possible. Because what does it profit a nation to gain the world and lose her soul? The people, it's time for the people to recognize we have to restore our divine order. And it starts with knowing yourself, rebuilding the family structure, and rebuilding your community, and by extension, rebuilding your nation and in our region. We are one people. We're always one people. Yes, they came and divided us, but we are aware now. Let us not sit back idly, watching, wondering, when will we be next? Because in reality, again, like I said in the opening, what happens in one space in the Caribbean happens to all spaces in the Caribbean. We learned that with the Haitian Revolution. We learned that then. Had we followed suit, we wouldn't be in this situation, but we stood back. Let us not make the same mistake again. I want to thank you all. Like I said, this is the part one, though, because tomorrow is a new day, and there's no telling where this is going to go. So remain strong, remain faithful. I'm sending, in fact, family, y'all already know, send nothing but kinetic energy towards our brothers and sisters across the region, but especially in Dominica tonight. Good energy, positive vibes. Let your prayers be lifted up to the brothers and sisters again, and let us rally around this righteous cause. Because again, if we don't nip it in the bud, this is just a test run here. This is only a test run. Because like I said, I saw some videos in Barbados and the equipment that Barbados recently acquired as well for similar situations. And of course, Barbados' pocketbook might be a little deeper. We got a lot more fancy stuff for the people planning in Barbados for marching and protesting. And the unfortunate part is this, though. They're pushing us and pushing us. So like I said a few nights ago, to know who's expecting a riot, look at those who's preparing for it. That's all you got to do. Look who's preparing for it, and you'll know who's planning it. There's something called organized chaos. Let us be wise, family. Let us continue to be wise. I want to thank you all again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And like I said, this is to be continued. So before you go, I usually, there's just so many comments though. I can't even go through all. I be trying my best to share the voiceless as well. The people usually have a lot of great ideas. And in fact, someone is saying thank you all for sharing as well.
We've been reading them.
Yes, you see that? This night, there's a gentleman from Dominica that is a musician, and I don't think he's with us anymore. I had played his music before, again, dealing with liberation. And I always try to encourage, the artists to create the opportunity to speak truth to power. And so I want to add that tonight. I don't have his link, but I'll probably try to find it and play it before the night is out. But I want to play another song by the Wailers. And I know the elders might be on here as well. Might recall, I would ask you to guess the song, but I won't even go so far because it's about, let me just type it in real quick here. There you go. My members, my family here would know, they would know the tune already all too well. And so, but I want to play it for my family tonight as a source of inspiration. I want to share this with you tonight. It's like one of my anthems. I started this program during COVID as a joke, just really to make fun. And it has grown on its own. And like I said, the voice of the voiceless. And like this is said, the tune is Rise and Shine. They already know. They already know what I'm going to play. Bunny Wheeler.
Let's ride. Rise and shine. This is a cry of a people who for over 400 years have been enslaved in mental bondage. A people who with their blood, their sweat, their tears, in their hands, they built the great cities of Babylon. Only to be paid with the wages of the wicked, the sword, and the gun.
There's a message in the music, man. There's a message in it. The whole Dominican community, man. One Caribbean family. They're one people. Under God.
We've been down in the poverty much too long.
Too long in poverty, man.
We've been down in the slavery oh so long. We've been down in humility much too long. We've been down in the valley oh so long.
But it's
So
time to do
we're
what?
gonna rise and shine
Rise and shine, family.
and win your liberation. For now's the time when all nations must be free.
All nations must be free.
Rise and shine.
Must be free.
Restore your strength and power. Waste no more time. Remember your history.
Great people. Leave an example for the children to follow, man.
Well,
We are being watched, family.
we've been down in the poverty much too long. We've been down in humility oh so long. We've been down in the suffering much too long. We've been down in humiliation oh so long.
Too long, family, too long.
Rise and shine and win your liberations. For now's the time when all nations must be free. Rise and shine. For the sake of the younger generations, putting hands and heart in the mind to brotherhood and unity, we're gonna rise and shine. Restore your strength and power. Waste no more time. Waste no more time. Remember your history. Don't repeat it. Just rise and shine. It's the morning sun that surrounds you. It's international morality time, where mankind must be born anew. Rise and shine. Yes, we're gonna rise. Yes, we're gonna rise. Yes, we're gonna rise. 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 Oh yes. Remember the slave ship. Remember the taskmaster's whip.
Yes, family.
Remember where you're from. Remember.
International morality time. International morality time, family. It's time to do what is right. Bottom line, you know what I'm saying? Simple, man.
I like that.
Wake up, sleeping sons of Jacob. It is all time. I want to thank you all for sharing again, you know, and like I said, we're going to stay connected because we're going to keep track of what's going on here. So, to be continued.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful,
All
wonderful.
right. Thank you and good night.
Good
Appreciate
night.
it.
Yes, good.
Thank you so much and good night. In fact, just quickly though, I have a letter that's going to Mayor as chairman of CARICOM of what happened today. So the ERC has drafted a letter and sent to her. So I will send that to you
Yes.
once I have your information. Yes.
Do so. Do so. Yes, do so for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, family. I mean, what can be said? What more can be said? more than expected. I want you to know, right, that Dominica, we standing firm with you, 10 toes down. You know what I mean? So you're not alone, man. And that's the whole mindset. We have to adopt that as a people. You can't do a Chinese man nothing in America or in any country without China getting involved. You can't trouble a Israeli anywhere in the world without they getting involved. You can't trouble an American anywhere in the world without they getting involved. Yet we sit by in a region and let these puppets, because that's all they are. Because somebody else, hand is up. Well, you know where the hand goes, controlling what happens and their speech. We the people have to stand and speak on behalf of each other. So again, family, stay tuned. You got family in Dominica, check in on them, make some phone calls, answer questions, and see how we can get involved and be supporting. Like Queen Esther said, we don't want to wait till the hurricanes come then to have something to say. Let us get involved now. Let's make a difference now, family. There's so much to also bring regarding what's going on here in Barbados. So you got to link up in a couple nights to deal with that, because time is already, be at least 2 hours into this now. So to be continued. There was something I wanted to play regarding Grenada tonight, though. I think one of the ministers or the ex-prime minister collapsed while giving a presentation. Again, we don't know what's going on. A lot of things are happening across the region, completely looking like we're being destabilized. Man, it can't be everything happening at once. Somebody got to pay attention. It looks very orchestrated. So to be continued, family. Y'all already know. Haile Selassie I, Empress Reserve Menin, is the one perfect balance, what we're dealing with. So rise and shine. I ain't got to tell y'all, family. Remember your history, man. And pull it from the top again for Dominica, man.
You're going to rise and shine.
For Dominica, man.
This is a cry of a people who for over 400 years have been enslaved in mental bondage. A people who with their blood, their sweat, their tears, and their hands, they built the great cities of Babylon. Only to be paid with the wages of the wicked, the sword, and the gun. We've been down in the poverty much too long. We've been down in the slavery oh so long. We've been down in humility much too long. We've been down in the valley oh so long. So we're gonna rise and shine and win your liberation. For now's the time when all nations must be free. So rise and shine, restore your strength and power. Waste no more time, remember your history. We've been down in the poverty much too long. We've been down in humility oh so long. We've been down in the suffering much too long. We've been down in humiliation oh so long. But we are gonna rise and shine and win your liberations. For now's the time when all nations must be free. Rise and shine. For the sake of the younger generations, putting hands in heart, in the mind, to brotherhood and unity, we're gonna rise and shine forward. Waste no more time. Waste no more time. Remember your history. Don't repeat it. Just rise and shine. It's the morning sun that surrounds you. It's International Morality Time.